I'd like to call the Dunwood Select Board meeting to order. It's June 2nd and it's 6:03 p.m. Roll call shows that everyone is here, although I think Selectwoman Perry might have disappeared for a second, but we expect 5. She's not on my screen. Okay, so all 5 of us are here, which is great. I just want to, before we start, have a moment of reflection on those that are suffering because of the coronavirus, and also in the memory of George Floyd. Thank you. We have a long meeting tonight, so I just want to make an announcement in the beginning in case we have some dropouts. Thursday is candidates night. It's the only one. It's at 5:30, so it's a half hour earlier than select board meetings start. So it's at 5:30, and it is sponsored by the Ogunquit Chamber of Commerce, Ogunquit United, and the Ogunquit Residents Alliance. And we'll have obviously a moderator. And there are 2 seats open on the select board and 2 seats open on the budget review committee, and 4 candidates for each board. So that's 5:30 on Thursday, June 4th. Okay, and you get into the same way you get into these meetings. You can go to the calendar on the front page of the town website, or you'll probably get it in an email under news and announcements. So the first order of business is the meeting minutes.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question about the agenda?
Sure.
We had discussed at our last special meeting, it's been brought up a few times that we're no longer streaming our meetings on Facebook, and you mentioned that you'd put it on today's agenda for consideration moving forward. And I was wondering if we could add it to the agenda.
I forgot that I was putting that on. Sure, we could add it. Let's add it to the end, and if we because we're not streaming on, we're not using Facebook today. All those people are on through Zoom. Okay, so thank you. We'll put that on the agenda. The next item is liquor and amusement licenses. We just have a few tonight. We actually have 4 liquor license renewals and 2 amusement license renewals. We can do them in groups, so if there's anyone you want to call out and have questions about, please do so now.
Madam Chair, did you want to get the minutes approved for May 5th?
Yeah, sure, I forgot that. I'll go right back to that. Let's stick on the liquor and amusement license. So is there nothing to call out? Is there a motion to approve a full liquor license renewal for the Greenery Cafe, Jackie's 2, MC Perkins Cove, and the Leverett Theater?
So moved.
Motion by Selectman Daley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Selectman Oulette. All those in favor, show of hands. Motion passes 5-0. Is there a motion to approve the amusement licenses for MC Perkins Cove and the Leverett Theater?
So moved.
Motion by Selectman Daley. Is there a second? Second by Selectman Oulette. All those in favor, show of hands. 5-0. Thank you. Yes, back to the meeting minutes. We have one set from May 5th. I think all of us were present. Are there any edits or suggestions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes of May 5th, 2020?
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I thought it was just myself, Bob, and you that were in attendance for that meeting.
Yeah,
Okay, I don't have them in front of me. So Bob, Selectman Wynn, Selectman Willett, and Matt and myself. So
Yeah.
we'll be voting on it. Are there any edits? Okay, great. All those in favor, show of hands. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you. We have a very full agenda tonight. The first item on the agenda is really very exciting. It's a proclamation recognizing June as Pride Month in Ogunquit. We'd like to read that proclamation out loud. And if we can start with Selectman Daley.
He's muted.
Give me a second. I did read it, but I don't have it open right now. Give me a second.
Sure.
I know Pat sent it earlier, so I have it here. Okay.
Fine. We get so much paperwork over the computer. It's so difficult.
Okay, so, oh, thank you. Okay, whereas the town of Agunquit is committed to being a welcoming, safe, and equitable community for all people, regardless of age, race, sexual orientation, gender identification, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, country of origin, or religion, and. Lindsay?
Selectman Perry?
Sorry, had my screen down. Whereas Agunquit is fortunate to have residents, town employees, community volunteers, business owners, elected officials, and others who are part of the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, LGBTQ plus community.
Whereas the town of Agunquit is proud of the meaningful, beneficial, long-lasting impacts the LGBTQ plus community has had and continues to have on the history, civic life, cultural enrichment, and overall character of Agunquit.
Whereas the LGBTQ plus community has worked tirelessly for equality and inclusivity, and, John?
Whereas we as a town wish to promote awareness and increase understanding among all people who live, work, or visit Agunquit, and.
Whereas the town joins with the LGBTQ plus community in a celebration of diversity and unity and remains committed to treating all people with fairness, dignity, and respect, and.
Whereas the Stonewall riots, which took place in June of 1969, are regarded as the catalyst for the LGBTQ plus movement for civil rights in the United States, and.
Whereas the month of June is to celebrate as Pride Month throughout the United States.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Agunquit Select Board does hereby proclaim and recognize June 2020 as Pride Month in Agunquit, and invites all people to reflect on the struggle for equality that the LGBTQ plus community has faced, celebrate their contributions that have enhanced our community and society, and recognize the work remains to be done to increase the understanding. Proclaim this second day of June 2020. Thank you. Selectman Willett or anyone, do you have information on the flag raising, when that is and time?
So several people have been communicating and a decision was made. We talked with Pat that with all that was going on, it didn't feel like it was appropriate to do an official flag raising ceremony where we'd have people in attendance, and in particular end up most likely having more than 50 people, which the governor currently has said that we need to avoid. So in working with Pat, our police department raised the pride flag on Monday, and it is up and will be up the remainder of the month. So thank you very much. And for those interested, the group of people who have been talking fairly informally, there's a lot of conversations happening about how to organize more officially. And further details will be coming out about that, including for anyone who may be interested in becoming involved, how to do so, et cetera, when it comes to thinking about pride in Agunquit.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda, also a presentation, is our FY 2018-2019. So this is FY19 audit report, which has just been completed, and I'm going to turn it over to our town manager, Pat, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an annual process that we undertake. It's a way to look back on what we have done for our financial operations, and we have an independent auditing firm that does that for us. This is the third year that we've been associated with RHR Smith, and we're happy to have Ron Smith, the president, as well as Erica May with us today. They'll go over some of the highlights of the audit. I just want to say that we appreciate all the work that we've received from the firm. I think it's been a difficult year where we had some transitions. The treasurer left. And we wanted to make sure that we had everything in order when the treasurer left. So you always have a mini audit done at that time to make sure that everything is all accounted for and so forth. So that went well. And then this audit is going to be, as we just said, for the prior year, hard for people to keep their fiscal year straight sometimes. But this is the one that ended a year ago, almost a year ago in June. I just make mention that we have our treasurer Mandy Cummings with us tonight, but Mandy was not an employee at all during fiscal year 19. So this is all retrospective of what was happening in the town at that time. That being said, I think that we had good financial results, as with any audit or any time you bring independent people in, you always ask if there are things that you could do to improve. And of course, the auditors are not doing their job if they're not looking for things for us to improve on. So I'm very pleased that Erica was so great to work with on a day-to-day basis. And I think we certainly have been pleased that the results of this audit are good in terms of the kind of things we like to see. For me, as town manager, obviously you pass a budget, the voters expect you to live within that budget, which we certainly have. You also try to put aside some money at the end of every year that you've managed to be able to do some cost savings in the course of the year, or you're able to bring in additional revenues, which allow you to put some of your undesignated fund balance. And so both of those two things are very important. Town manager, for the staff, I think that we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I think Cummings has made a number of improvements to our operation we're already benefiting from. But with that said, I think for the select board to understand, the auditors really work for the select board. This is their opportunity to give you a snapshot of our operations. And with that, I just ask if Ron wants to get us started, maybe talk a little bit about the firm and what you do, and then maybe talk about our results. So Ron, if you would.
Sure. Erica's the real brains of the outfit. Let me get that out there. Yeah, it was a transition year, as Pat said. You know, when you went from treasurer to treasurer, you know, there certainly were some struggles in that area. When Mandy came in, your bank account wasn't reconciled. We certainly had to step in and help Mandy, and I think that was an opportunity for Mandy to look at the whole process and make some suggestions and recommendations. But there were some struggles for sure, and in the area of bank reconciliations in the world of government, that's an area you really want to stay on top of. But we're confident that in 2019 that the struggles was because of the transition. You know, it gave an opportunity for your staff to look at some modifications and some adjustments to your bank reconciliation process. You know, and I think that that's been great. I know that she's working diligently to get caught up. Certainly in 2019 and 20, we expect the audit to go a lot smoother and facilitate, you know, at a pace better now that we're not going to have to play catch up and work with you all to help play catch up. But that was probably the biggest challenge area for the town. There are some other areas in 19 with some assessing certificate issues, you know, that led to some under assessments. And upon further review, it looked like the same thing happened in 20, you know, for some assessing errors. And there were some just process issues with just having your employees submit better detail with credit cards and, you know, and cash disbursements and really just staying on top of that area. I think in this era, we live in a world of transparency, and when you reimburse somebody, clearly, you know, that there needs to be some kind of path and documentation to do that. I know Erica found some instances of that, and she's prepared to go over the financial condition and just pretty much sum up what I just said. But all in all, you know, I think given the transition struggles and some of the things that Mandy, you know, came into, and just that time lapse that, you know, that she inherited, you know, I think that I'd be proud if I was the town of Ogunquit. And like I say, we work to certainly get you and get 19 and 20, expedited it on fast track, because the information we're about to go over is a year old, and we're sitting in a world of madness right now that, quite frankly, I don't think that, nobody's going to know in the world of government till well after, July 1st. And we do almost every one of your neighbors from Kittery, right up to Falmouth, and there's a lot of concern, out there in this world right now, and what the economy is going to look like, especially in the impact on government. And I know Pat's very anxious to get expedited and turn 20 around to kind of look into the crystal ball, whatever it is who you guys are at. So Erica, I'll turn that over to you now.
Sure. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Pat. I definitely agree. Mandy unfortunately got stuck into a situation, and looking at other people's work is never an easy thing to do. And I think she's done a great job trying to kind of move on from John's old ways and kind of implement new procedures from an outsider looking in. I think that's great. She's been doing good at keeping track of everything. So that being said, let's take a look at your financial statements here. We just did a little brief summary. We can go over
Okay.
kind of the key highlights.
And Erica, if I might, we do have your PowerPoint, so I think Matt is trying to call that up now so people can follow.
Perfect.
Yep, just give me 1 second. Is it up for you guys, hopefully?
Yes.
I see it.
Yes. Right. So to start off, we just wanted to let everyone know that the town received an unmodified opinion. This means that the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. All pertinent guidelines, statute, standards were followed in this audit. And so if we go over to this next slide here, you'll see this is going to be an overview of your operating revenues, also known as your general fund revenues.
Pat, who can drive there, Pat, to just change the slides?
I'm hoping,
The
So-
slide did change on my end. Are you guys still see page 1, I think?
I think that's still page 1, correct, Erica?
Yes, from what I'm seeing.
I have general fund revenues is what my page says. Is that what?
No, my page says that I'm looking at says Town of Aguanquit financials, and basically that we just completed the audit.
Okay,
Yeah.
hold on. Let me reboot it here. Hold on.
Oh, the world of Zoom.
how many of you done already, Ron, via Zoom?
We've done a couple so far, not too many because we're right at the end of our December year end. So thankfully we got most of those done before this all happened, but
Oh,
it's
great.
been a process, a learning curve for sure.
Yeah.
Especially for
What do you,
those of us,
do you see
including
it now
myself.
or no?
Yep, I see the general
Yes.
fund.
Okay, let's hope it scrolls after this. Sorry.
Perfect. So as you can see here, this is going to be an overview of your budget to actuals for your general fund revenues. The largest portion of your revenues, as you already know, I'm sure, is going to be your tax revenue. This comes in at around 60%. And the second largest revenue source is going to be your charges for service, coming in at around 15%. Overall, for the year, your budgeted revenues came in around 18.8 million. The actuals came in at 19.4 million, which is approximately a $250,000 increase in revenues over what was budgeted. Going over to the next slide here.
And I would just say, Matt, before you move that,
Yeah.
I think the biggest one of concern on that going forward post July 1 that we're certainly having all the conversations with with our municipal clients is the property tax collections, later on this fall, and your charges for services, I think are your two big areas of revenue that need to be looked at. And what we're seeing, is certainly, as you guys are looking at, there's economies of scale too, where if the revenues are going to be impacted, so will the expenses in theory too. And, I know that we've had some conversations with Pat, and that's certainly a concern we consider to monitor, and what stimulus package number 3 and number 4 looks like. I think money will come to Ogunquit and every other government in different ways to try to mitigate the impact of some of these things. So.
Ron,
Yes.
can you elaborate a little bit more on charges for services?
Well, that's so Erica, do you have the breakdown of charges for services? And then I'll hit them with the detail.
Sure, I can get you a breakdown here. Just 1 second.
Parking lot, I know, is a big one, correct?
Right.
Yes, parking revenues. Let's see here.
Over? Wow.
Yeah, so the theory behind the parking revenue, and like I say, you're not the only one in this condition. Every one of your neighbors is in a similar condition with parking revenue, beach revenue, and certainly unique things to summer in Maine. And the logic is if people aren't allowed to come in summer, that there's some concern, that it's obviously going to impact those parking lot revenues that are really, quite frankly, a big windfall and revenue generator to your municipality. So we're seeing those projections cut as much as 50 to 70% by some of your neighboring communities. And that's pretty alarming when $1 million or $1.5 million, comes through the door for some of that. That certainly that could be a budget breaker, for sure. And that's the one that I would say, is the one that catches my eye the most. Erica, what was the next biggest one in that?
So the ambulance revenue actually came in a lot higher than budgeted for as well. So that was very huge. Almost $200,000 more.
Yeah, I'm not sure that one's going to be impacted. And those are your two biggest ones. The biggest concern is going to be parking lot. And you're not alone with that concern. A lot of your neighbors are really, 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 concerned is the best way I can say it. And I think it's going to be post July 1, before you really see, any, really what the resemblance of the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm not sure that's going to be seen anytime soon after July 1, but I think that area certainly will be, of concern. And I think the concern is two of your major holidays, Memorial Day and the 4th of July, could come and go, and that certainly is going to leave your tourist town, in some concern financially.
May I, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Ron and Erica, I was a little surprised when you mentioned credit cards. I thought we had a pretty tight credit card policy in town. So did you guys find anything like outrageous, like any credit cards above $500, say, that was not approved?
I think it was more of, and even before John left, he was sending emails to people that they needed to shape up and do a better job, putting that in. I don't think it was, it's to the point of egregious. I think it was just very sloppy, and really an area, and Erica can go over some of the details, but it's just an area, of housekeeping. And John tried to housekeep it, for sure. We saw some of the emails, going back and forth between him and some of your staff, about, hey, folks, we're going to pay you. You need to give us this receipt or that receipt. Erica, do you want to elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah, so credit cards was definitely one of the larger issues we noticed when doing our test of controls. There just seemed to be a general lack of documentation to these statements. A lot of times there were instances where the credit card statements were missing for a certain month. It was difficult to find the statements once we did get them. And then for the backup for some of these charges, there were instances where there was no itemized receipts for restaurants. There were instances where we just couldn't find invoices, period. So that was one of our concerns. And after talking with Mandy, she discussed that she, for FY20, has kind of changed that credit card process, gone away with some of the old credit card, as well. And I think that we're going to see a change for sure in FY20, or I'm confident that we will. Based on what I've seen.
And we'll certainly keep you guys posted on that one in the 20 audit.
Would you be able to move down to the next slide here, slide 3? You get a second?
I did, but did it go for you?
No, unfortunately not.
This is gonna be fun. Hold on.
There's only 52 more slides, folks.
What? Oh, boy.
Alrighty, here we go. So this is going to be your general fund expenditures or your operational expenses. Coming in at 35% of your total expenditures is your education expense. 20% is your public safety charges. And then coming in at 13% is public works. Overall this year, your budgeted expenditures were 15.6 million, and the actuals came in at 15.3 million. So you came under budget around 290,000. There is that one area you'll see in general government that you overspent a bit. A large portion of this is going to be due to the land use, legal fees. That was a big hit this year that wasn't budgeted. So other than that, you look to do pretty well.
I have a question.
Sure.
What legal, this is 2019, right?
Yes.
Okay, what legal fees are you talking about?
So there were litigation fees under the land use. So hang on here, I can, if you want, pull up the detail better.
This was the year of the recall, if I remember correctly, in the lawsuit regarding the recall.
I'm not sure.
I thought we couldn't go over by more than 25,000 legally.
We couldn't,
Yeah.
we had the, sorry.
We did.
Yes, so what you'll notice in the financial statements, we actually do disclose that this article is overspent. Let's see here.
And it was approved at town meeting.
Give me a second, folks. I'll tell you exactly how much your legal was overspent. Just bear with me 1 second.
Yep, just trying to open that up here.
Madam Chair, may I just insert something while we're waiting?
Let's
The
just
land
wait
use
till they get
tract
this
was
question.
overspent by about $22,000. Your general government was overspent by 69. And Erica, how much of that 69? I know a big part of that was legal.
Yes, let's see the breakdown here. So we have, let's see, 85,000 in litigation, which was budgeted at 0. And then the other large overage came from the contingency, which was overspent as well. Budgeted at 272,000, coming in at 385,000.
That contingency, though, Erica, was not part of general government, correct?
Oh, sorry. Yes, that is on my, sorry.
So legal, again, you had some other expenses to kind of mitigate the overspent of legal, but legal was all of it, for general government.
Okay.
That's
I
correct.
guess-
If I could interject, Madam Chair, I don't want to interrupt the auditors, but yes, you will already recall that 2019, we had significant legal costs. We had a lawsuit regarding a personnel matter, and we had the recall. We also did, as Erica said, we did have litigation on a planning board matter. and a Board of Assessment review. But overall, the town's legal costs were exceeded by over $150,000 because of those, but it was ratified by the town meeting. So as like Member Daley said, I mean, the select board can transfer up to $25,000. The other was transferred by vote of the town meeting,
Mhm.
but it was because of the personnel decision where the town prevailed in court, the recall process, and 2 land use cases. As
Thank you.
opposed to just general government operations being overexpended.
Right. Okay, I had just forgot that all these things fell at the same time. I didn't realize that the workplace litigation was that year. I lost track. Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
we had the personnel issue coming in at around 42,000,
Okay.
land use 85, and assessment review at 12,000. And that's
Thank you.
over and above what was already budgeted for the legal services.
Thank you.
All right, and going down to this 4th slide here, what we're going to be seeing is a comparison for 3 years for your general fund balances. The column on the left is going to be 2017. The column in the middle is going to be 2018, and on the far right is going to be 2019. So within your fund balance, the general fund balance, there's going to be 4 separate categories. You have your non-spendable portion, which is largely tied up in prepaids. Your committed fund balance, which traditionally has been carry forwards. You'll notice this year that your committed fund balance is actually 0. This is because in prior years you had carried forward various items such as ambulance, etc. And in FY19, you actually transferred those funds to a reserve instead of carrying them forward. The assigned fund balance is what you've traditionally used in the past to offset your subsequent year's budget. You'll notice that in FY18, you use slightly more surplus funds to reduce your budget than in FY19. And in your unassigned fund balance, you typically stay around $3 million, which is great. And you'll see that you actually increased your fund balance slightly this year. A lot of that came for several reasons from your increase in your revenue budgeted amounts and then using less than what you had budgeted for expenses. This brings us into our 5th and final slide. This is going to be a projection of your unassigned balance as a percentage of your expenditures. Basically, what this slide is saying is what we like to kind of see for in a municipality is having a undesignated fund balance of around 30 to 60 days of your operating budget. Your operating budget for FY19 was around $15.6 million. So if you were around 90 days, that would put you at $3.9 million or 25%. It looks to us that you're around 75 days. So you're in between 60 to 90 days-ish with your $3.2 million.
And let me just say, if you guys were at 30 days, 45 days in an oceanfront community going in for 2020, I would have put more of a sense of urgency on what's going to happen post-July, because you got a few neighbors that are a little light in their fund balance, and you're not one of them right now. And hopefully that will buy you some time to weather out the storm before, we find out how local government's going to get reimbursed, through this madness. So,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I, Ron and Erica? So obviously our fund balance is going to drop this coming year. We
Yes.
expect it to, but you're not concerned it's not going to drop enough to put us in jeopardy?
I think you're going to have 2 issues. I think your fund balance is so I'm not prepared to predict where it's going to end on June 30, 2020, because we're hoping, based upon getting through 9 months of your fiscal year, kind of pre-pandemic, that at least you got the summer, of of 18, 19, you got that summer under your belt. So I don't think that your concern is going to be 18, 19. I think your concern is going to be, 19, 20. I think your concern is going to be 20, 21, with that. And I think cash flow, is, as we're telling all of our communities that are predominantly tourist, driven, that really depend on a good tourism to bolster their economy. We're telling them, usually that probably January, February of the next year, so that puts it at 2021, you're probably going to see some cash flow issues. So the concern is that you've got something there possibly to mitigate that in the form of a TAN or a RAN. If you see any more significant increases or there's a delay in funding any type of mitigation from this pandemic. I think there's going to be some struggles, but I think you guys have bought yourself probably the rest of the calendar year 2020, for some time. I'm more worried about the first 3 months of 21, and when that next round of tax money comes in.
So you think we're in good enough shape where it's not going to affect our ability to borrow money? The interest rate we
Now,
may
you won't
get-
have any problem borrowing money. My concern too out there in the local world is there's going to be a run on borrowing. If we get too deep into 20, into 2021, there's going to be a run on borrowing. And we've already seen some of the banks tell some of our clients, hey, we're capping any anticipatory borrowing at $1 million. Now, $1 million doesn't get you far in this day and age, which has caused a lot of the municipalities to delay or postpone or, quite frankly, cut its capital budget and renovations, for the next fiscal year to protect its cash flow. So I think that there's going to be a run on banks, right now, in the near future. And I think you're going to see a lot of your neighbors and a lot of government, reach out to the banks and literally put some kind of for lack of a better way to say it, an insurance policy, with some line of credit available just for that day, when your cash starts to, to get down to a level of, wow, we haven't seen this for a long time in Ogunquit. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, and definitely one of the best ways to kind of mitigate that, and what we've been talking with Mandy this audit season about, is really kind of implementing capital plans for situations as this. We'd like to see a natural disaster or some sort of emergency reserve that, that you can go to instead of having to be worried in the future that you have diminishing fund balance. Other than that, I think that's mostly what
your unassigned
discussed
fund
this year.
balance is your emergency reserve. You've got some other communities around you that have taken the time to build up some of their capital reserves, some other special reserves that they have, where they've got access, where they can re-obligate that money back to, stopping some of the problems of their general fund, revenue gaps out there. And they put themselves in a position. And that's probably one thing, if I'm Ogunquit, that I would also do is really look at your portfolio. Where's your money? And right now, a lot of your money is sitting in that general fund to combat things like this pandemic and just the uncertainty of the future, and use it for tax mitigation, as you historically have done, every year. And the rest of your money virtually is tied up. I think you've got a little, $1.4 million or 1.5, Erica, sitting in capital. So that money's obligated. But now some of the communities are saying, well, we got to defer some of these projects, and we may need some of that money because we don't know what the future is going to bring. And I think that's an area that I would certainly look at Ogunquit going forward. Is those areas in the form of a crisis reserve, emergency reserve, because really right now you're using your general fund balance to do that.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Selectman Willett.
In the chart about showing that our funds for our, sorry, the language is spacing me, our discretionary funds, basically our surplus funds. Unassigned, thank you. You showed that right now we have about somewhere between 60 to 90 days. But at this
75.
point, the budget that we're putting forward for 2021 anticipates that we're going to use about $1.6 million of that fund. And so that's about half of what we currently have in there. So that's going to drop us from, instead of 75 days to, I would say, right around that 30-day mark, give or take. Any thoughts
So
on
can I
that?
ask Heath, is any of that money being used to combat this pandemic and kind of saying, thank you, taxpayers, we know it's going to be a tough year?
Yes.
How much of that 1.6 or all of it?
All of the 1.6 is the budget we're putting forward suggests that we use 1.6 of that 3.2 million.
That's going to
So
hurt.
this is,
The tax,
So-
rate.
sorry, go ahead.
It's
Pat.
being done to keep the tax rate flat.
Yeah, and if that's a choice that Gunkwit's going to make, Heath, to keep that tax rate flat, there's going to have to be some compromises in future years. And I just hope that, whether it's stimulus package number 3, number 4, or number 5, that there's some money coming back to the town of Gunkwit in the form of, relief, for lack of a better way to say that, to allow you to not use all of that, but mitigate some of that 1.6.
And I would also take a look at your fund balance policy, because I believe your fund balance policy insists that you have around 10% plus 1 month expenditures in your undesignated fund balance, which would be around like 18.3-ish%.
About 60 days.
10% in 1 month.
But Erica, wasn't there discretion by the board to actually go below that, though?
I would have to reread that policy. It could be. I know that Mandy was working on getting those updated. Mandy
And
had,
point being, you all, that's a choice that a lot of municipalities in the state of Maine and Vermont have chosen to do, is say, these times are unprecedented. We don't know what the future is going to hold, but here's what we know. We owe it to our community, to keep this intact until we get a little bit better information, on what the magnitude is. And there's a lot of people doing exactly what you are doing, Heath, and that's putting money out to try to keep that community and keep the burden, off the taxpayers, and really helping them out and hoping that form of relief comes sooner than later.
Yes, can I also?
I'm just glad you guys got it. So.
And that's an estimate. I mean, it could be more, could be less. It depends on our other revenue sources. So we're crossing our fingers on that.
And like I say, that's a predetermined number that you've all set based upon a predetermined budget. But certainly if the budget looks better, great. If it looks worse, then you're going to have cash flow problems that I was talking about. And that's why you're seeing a lot of communities approaching their banks right now to put some of these lines of credits in place, just in case that happens. Not a function, of like immediate, more so when, looking into that crystal ball. And we see the when usually towards the end of the calendar year or early next year in 2021.
Mhm.
So that's what my cash flow analysis is also looking at, depending on, hopefully we have a good season, but that's about where we're looking as well.
Other questions for the auditors?
Selectman Willett.
2 questions. One is, you mentioned in the past, we carry forward money versus put it in the reserve. Is what we're currently doing best practice from your perspective compared to what we did in the past when we just carried the money forward?
so I can definitely send you a letter that actually helps kind of differentiate a carry forward versus a reserve account. And it looks like this year, really what happened with those reserves is traditionally you use them, the carry forward, you traditionally use them in the next budget season. And it didn't look like that was going to happen this year. So what had happened is there was an approval process to get those actually moved into the reserves, so they didn't just go into your undesignated surplus, to kind of keep those separate.
And I think that's the better practice, Heath, for sure.
Okay, thank you. And then I apologize, we just got the official